Well, hello, and thank you for deciding to stop by this little live stream. Anybody that happens to pop in, feel free to comment or ask questions. I'll be able to see those comments here in the app that I'm using and be able to respond to them as is necessary and available. If you're watching this after the fact, you can still, of course, leave comments, and I will do my best to get back to answering those questions as they come up. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about using screen time on your device or your kids' devices. We know that nowadays online access is pretty much ubiquitous, and so giving our kids these devices, whether it be an iPhone, an iPad, a laptop, even an Apple Watch, there are things that we want to make sure that we are doing to try to protect our kids as much as we want to, right? The idea is that you know how to parent your child. I'm not making assumptions on your parenting style. I am giving you the tools to be able to parent your child the way that you want to parent them. This is not a, this is the only way to do it kind of thing. This is a, here's the tools. You choose to what level you want to use these tools. That's how you parent your child. So don't take anything that I say about what I do or how we do things here. Don't take that as the only way to do it. You're the parent. You make these decisions. But if you want the ability to protect your child to a degree, this is at least going to give you an opportunity to do that to some degree. We're going to go through all of the steps as best of my ability with this, so you can follow along. If you're watching this video after the fact, you can, of course, pause the video, go through some of the steps, and then come back and pick up wherever you need to get the next bit of information. I'm going to go on the assumption that you do not have child Apple ID accounts, and so we're going to go through the process of setting up those. I'm also going to make assumptions that you're not currently using family sharing, so we're literally going to start from the very beginning as far as getting the devices set up. Now, the big thing is, especially if you're watching this after the fact, you will want to make sure that your devices are all up to date. You want them on whatever the latest version of software is that you can possibly get on those devices, not only for security updates, but that makes the interoperability between the devices better. So make sure that your devices are up to date. Make sure you know your Apple ID and password. Make sure if you already have your kids' Apple IDs set up that you know their passwords, because you're going to need them in order to move through this process. So let's dive in. We're going to start at the very beginning, like I said. So On your device, whether it's a Mac, whether it's an iPad, whether it's an iPhone, you're definitely going to want to go in and you're going to want to click on the settings button. All right, that's how we get into the nuts and bolts of where to go through all of these setups. Okay, next step, you're going to want to click on your name up here at the top. So you can see this is mine on my iPhone. If you don't have an iPhone, you're doing it on a Mac or an iPad, it's probably going to look something like this. You're going to want to click right here on your name. That's going to take you into your iCloud settings. All right, so next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come down to where you see family sharing, and you're going to click on that. Now, mine says learn more, or this one here says learn more because this has not been set up yet. If you have already set up family sharing, then you're going to have, it's going to say like how many family members you have already sharing. If you don't have any, or you've not set it up yet, you're going to go through that process right now, okay? So this is what it looks like on an iPad or on a Mac. You're going to have family sharing, and again, in this case, it's saying set up because it has not been set up yet. All right. Now it may ask you some questions when you are setting up your own family sharing. Go through real quick and answer those questions so that you can get that information already dialed in, and you'll have an opportunity then to see the next few screens that I am looking at. So again, if you have questions or if you need me to slow down or cover something and you're watching this live, go ahead and type a comment. I can see those comments and I can do my best to try to answer those questions. All right. So once again, family sharing is where you want to be. So let's go back over that real quick just so you get your idea. You want to go to settings. You want to click on your name. And then we're going to move into family sharing. Not set up, go through the setup process real quick. If it is already set up, great. You're a step ahead of where most other people are. All right. Next, once you have family sharing set up, you need to add family members. All right. Or if you do not have a child account, you'll need to create a child account. Now, before I go too much farther on that, children's accounts in Apple are for kids under the age of 13. You cannot set up a standard Apple ID for a child under the age of 13 unless you lie about their birth date. If you try to set up a child account in the adult section and you put their birth date into where it shows that they are under 13, it will push you over to creating a child account. A child accounts, when you set them up, can only be at iCloud.com accounts. So their address, their email address, their Apple ID will be whatever you choose at iCloud.com. Okay? Child accounts are fantastic for kids under 13 because that gives you, the parent, more granular control over what kinds of things that they can access on their device should you choose to do that. Okay? So again, not me telling you how to parent, just telling you what your options are, what your choices are as far as that's concerned. All right. So you're going to click the plus button up there on your iPhone, or if it's on an iPad or a Mac, you're going to click, where is that here? Right here where it says add member. I think this is on Mac OS. If you're on an iPad using iPad OS, usually the add member button is up here somewhere in the top. I don't have a photo of that, but it's usually right up here in the top corner. Once you click on that add member, you're going to be presented with this option right here. So you can see you can invite somebody. So if you have a child already who has, let's say, an adult Apple ID, you can click here to invite others. Let's say you want to invite a spouse or another family member. You would click invite others. You would put in whatever the email address they used for their Apple ID, and you would send them that invite. It goes through text message. I think you can send it through email. If you're close enough to them, you can airdrop. That's the word I was looking for, airdrop. I was thinking AirPlay, but that's for watching shows. You can airdrop it to them. That gives them the opportunity to join your family. Your family share can have up to 6 family members. And the term family members is pretty loose. They encourage you to make it like your family unit that's all living under one roof, but there are no strict guidelines that force you to do that. So you can have family members, whatever. The other option here is to create that child account. Now, if you do not have a child account, you want to make sure you set one up. Let's talk a little bit about sharing Apple IDs. If you are a parent and you have just taken your Apple ID and stuck it on your kid's device, there's a number of reasons why that's bad. Number one, any settings that you put for the child on that device are automatically going to follow to your device. So if you have an iPhone that is yours with your Apple ID and you set your Apple ID up on a kid's phone, those settings are all going to be the same across those devices. So they can run the odds of getting your text messages unless you sign everything out of the Messages app. They can access your iCloud data. They can access files. Also, restrictions. You can't necessarily have restrictions on their device and not have those same restrictions on your device, especially, and I'll get into this in a little bit, there's a button where it allows you to share across devices for like screen time. It'll ask you if you want to share this across devices. So if you set all that up under your own Apple ID, your child has potential access to all that stuff. Not only that, if you don't go in and change some of the settings, they can get your text messages, they can get your phone calls, all of that. So, pictures, they can also see your photos. There's a lot of information that gets shared across. I remember when I was working at the fruit stand years ago, I had a parent come in and all of their photos were gone. And they couldn't figure out what had happened. Well, it turns out they were sharing their Apple ID with their child, and their child didn't know this and went through and deleted all of the photos out of the photo album. Well, because everything's synced to iCloud, deleted off of one device, it deletes off of all devices that are sharing the same Apple ID. So you want to make sure that you're not sharing an Apple ID. If you are currently, I encourage you now to take the time to create that child Apple ID, especially if the kid is under 13. If the kid is over 13, you can create a regular adult Apple ID. You can still use screen time, but you'll have to do it on that device instead of being able to do it as a parent or guardian on your own device to take care of that. Let's continue to move here. So you are going to click Add Member. You're going to come up to this screen where it's Invite Others or Create a Child Account. Really, the steps to create a child account are quite simple. You're going to go in there, hit Create Child Account. It's going to walk you through the steps to create them an Apple ID. It's going to ask for name. It's going to ask for birth date. It's going to ask for you to create an email address for them. Once you have finished creating that child's Apple ID, you need to sign into that Apple ID with their device. So, let's say they have that iPhone that you may be sharing your Apple ID with them. You're going to have to go into iCloud. You're going to have to sign out of your iCloud on that device, and you're going to have to sign into iCloud with their new child Apple ID. This does mean that some data may end up being lost. So make sure that you understand, hey, child, we're going to do this. It's for your good, but you are going to lose out on some data. Let's say that they're playing a game. Then that game happens. They happen to be pretty advanced in the game. And they might lose their progress because it's synchronized through your Apple ID and not theirs. There is a chance, and I can cover this later on, or I can do another video on this when we talk about sharing apps and that kind of stuff. There's a chance that some of that data may be able to be recovered, but just know that if you've already set this up with your Apple ID on their device, it's likely that they're going to have data that is not going to be on their device any longer. They need to understand the risk as well as you in order to determine if this is the direction that you want to go. So you are either, like I say, you are going to invite people, which means you're putting in their Apple ID, you're sending them a text message or AirDrop or email, something along those lines. They have to click on that, and then they get an opportunity to share in your family. Or you're going to create that child account for any child that is under 13 years of age. Now, if you see right here, it says you will share. Basically, any subscriptions with Apple that you are signed up with, those will be shared should you choose with the rest of your family. One of those things being like iCloud storage. We currently, because we have multiple devices, we do the 2 terabyte plan. And so I have the plan on my account, but the girls and Sarah all get access to that 2 terabytes of storage. That does not mean they can see my data that's on my iCloud storage. So it's like having a shelf with a safe, and each one of us has access to the shelf, but only they can access their safe on their shelf. So you don't have to worry about any of that data, if that's where you hide your Christmas lists or, special plans that you have for family vacations and you don't want them to see it. They can't access any of that stuff if they have their own Apple ID and they're using your iCloud storage. Technically, it's divvied up into segmented pieces that are secure and locked, and only their Apple ID and password can actually access that. Okay. One of the other things with a child account specifically is you will be asked to enable what's called Ask to Buy. Ask to Buy is a great feature if you want to use it. What that means is that anytime they go into the App Store, should you give them permission to access the App Store, and we'll cover that in just a little bit, they can tap on a app that they want to download, whether it's free or not, and then it'll say Ask to Buy, and it'll send you a notification. They will ask you, is it okay for me to buy this? You can then, of course, say yes or no. That way you're not spending money that you don't know about. You're wondering, where did this $45 bill come from? Well, Junior downloaded 75 games, and you didn't have Ask to Buy turned on, and it automatically charged your credit card because you shared all that information with Junior without verifying what might be happening in that regard. So, Ask to Buy is really important. For me, I turned Ask to Buy on, but I actually never told my kids for the longest time what their Apple ID passwords were. So I didn't have to worry about any of that happening because they simply didn't know how to type in their password. They didn't know what their password was, and that's required in order for them to be able to access the App Store. So we're going to go on the assumption right now that you have Ask to Buy turned on, that you have family sharing turned on, that your kids' account is signed in with their Apple ID. All right? Now the next part we're going to cover is the actual use of screen time. Screen time can be handled one of a couple of ways. If it is a child account and you have family sharing turned on, you can access their screen time from any of your devices. All right, you're going to go into settings and screen time. You can access that from any of their devices. If they have an older account, you are not going to be able to access it from your device. You have to access it from their device, which means you physically have to have their device in your hands in order to make it work. Okay? That's just the nuts and bolts of it. So, we are going to switch over here to my iPad, and we're going to take a look at screen time. All right? So now, if we take a look down here, here's my name, all right? So you can see my information here. This is my family sharing right here, so you get to see the wife and kids. We're going to go all the way down here to where this says screen time, and we're going to touch on that. Now, this is on my iPad. It's the same as on a phone. It just, you're only seeing this section right here on the phone until you touch it. You're not getting this segment over here, all right? So we're going to touch on screen time, and we're going to move into screen time. Now, this is my own screen time. This is my personal screen time, all right? If I scroll down here, because when I gave these kids their devices, which were hand-me-downs, we had, I set them up with child Apple IDs. And so that's why I'm able to access both Becca's and Hannah's from my device. Now, Becca is 17, Hannah is 15. Pretty soon, I'll be turning off screen time on Becca's device because she'll be an adult and she'll be able to make those decisions on her own. Hannah's going to have to wait a little while longer. She still has a little more time before we get into to doing those kinds of things. So I can still access Becca's because she is still considered a child and I have not turned off the screen time settings. Once I turn them off and release her from that, I will not be able to reset that up because she now has an adult Apple ID account. All right. When you get to screen time the first time, it's going to talk to you about turning it on. It's going to talk to you about lots of different things. Let's see here. I just made a boo-boo here. Let me get something going here real quick. There we go. All right, now I've got my spotter back. Okay, accidentally swiped when I shouldn't have. Sorry about that. Okay, you're going to be talked about turning it on, and here, right here, is that share across device. Let me move my face out of the way. Share across devices. On this particular device, I do not have it set to share. This is for me. This is my devices, whether I want to share my screen time information across all of my devices, okay? In this case, for whatever reason, I decided not to. So let's go through Becca's screen time. Now, because I have this set up, I'm not going to be prompted with the setup process. You, on the other hand, are going to be prompted with turning it on. So I can choose, if you see down here, I can choose to stop managing Becca's screen time. I can turn off app and website activity, okay? I can change the screen time passcode. What happens is you're going to turn on screen time and it's going to walk you through some steps. Those steps, you're going to answer questions, all right? Some of it's going to have to do with what we call downtime. Some of it's going to have to do with content restrictions and that kind of stuff. I'm going to walk through that so that you'll get an idea of what each of these things does, all right? But you're going to turn it on and you're going to create a 4-digit passcode. Do not let your kids know what this 4-digit passcode is. If your 4-digit passcode, if it comes up, the 4-digit passcode, they will know what it is. They can override the settings on their device and you are not going to have any control anymore until you reset that passcode. Also, don't forget the passcode. It's not that easy to reset the code. Apple doesn't make it simple. They don't want kids to be able to do it. So don't reset or don't forget your passcode and make sure you set one up because otherwise the rest of this is unimportant because kids are smart and they know technology better than we do. So let's go through what the different things are here in the screen time. So if we look at this, this is the daily average. Now, when we get into some stuff, you'll see I can take a look at all kinds of different things. I can see exactly what it is that Becca does with her time when she's on her devices. I have to choose to go in and do that. I don't worry much about Becca because she's a good kid. So I give her some freedom when it comes to that. Again, parenting for everybody is going to be a little bit different. But that being said, I can actually go in and touch and I can see what kinds of things is she spending her time on. Okay? So most of the stuff that she's doing, if we take a look right here, we can see her games 30 minutes. All right? We can see what she did on today. We can take a look at different notifications. We can take a look at all of this great stuff. It gives us all kinds of information here, breaks it down as to what is being done. Now, you'll notice, again, let me move my face. I'm trying to find a good space, but my face is in the way. Let's do this. There we go. Okay. So we can do the day over here, or we can go back and take a look at the last week. So if I click on the last week, this gives me a breakdown of what she's done. All right. So games, Instagram, which I don't think I ever put a time limit on Instagram. You can see she's accessed files. We have some school data there. Her Kindle, playing some games, checking messages. This is all the information that you have an opportunity to take a look at and see what have they been spending their time on, how much time, and over the last little bit, what kind of time frame has that looked what are they spending the majority of their time on. Okay, now the reason why this is helpful is because, again, you as the parent, you get to decide how much time they're going to spend on each of these things. Now, if you look, her daily average up here, 5 hours, 32 minutes. But if we look, it's down 24% from last week. So in the last week, she's used it almost 25% less than what she had used it the previous week. Okay? All of that is really good information. It's really useful information. You can access it as often as you want. And the great part is, like, I'm looking at this on my iPad. I can pop in and I can check it out on my own iPad. I don't have to have her bring me her device. That's because we set it up with a child account and we've continued with these restrictions during that time frame. All right. Now let's talk about the different settings that you'll be using. Okay? Downtime. Here's my passcode. Now, I'm going to punch it in. You're not going to be able to see what it is, so I'm not worried about sharing it with the world. Okay, so downtime gives you the ability to schedule when you want her or your child to not be able to use most things on their device. And you can get in there and set up granularly what they are able to do with their device, all right? If you have kids who go to school and you want them to not access it at certain times of day, or you want weekends or whatever, you can customize those days. For us, we homeschool. We're pretty consistent with what we want. So you can see we have ours set at every day from 9:30 p.m. until 7 a.m. The majority of things on her phone she cannot use. All right? If she tries to use an app, it's going to tell her that she's out of screen time. She doesn't have any more screen time. So that gets her taken care of at nighttime. We know that past 9:30, she's going to have to read a book. She's going to have to do something else. She can't play games, watch movies, anything along those lines. And then this little button right here is really important where it says block at downtime. You want to make sure you have this clicked on because otherwise what happens is this becomes just a suggestion if this is not turned on. All right, so this is kind of the key to the whole thing. So make sure block at downtime is turned on. That way you know that downtime just means that they can't use their device unless you have made exceptions on certain apps. We'll get into that in just a few minutes. Okay? That's downtime. That's one of the first things you'll be asked to set up when you begin to set up screen time for your kids. All right? Again, if you have questions, put them in chat. I'll be able to see them and answer them either during this live stream if you ask it now, or when you go back and rewatch it, you'll put it in there and I'll try to get to it to answer it in the future. Next, we're going to cover is app limits. Now, app limits is great because it allows you to really get into the details of what you want as far as how much time you want to allow your kid to spend on games or educational or whatever. So for us, the big thing is we don't mind the kids playing games. We don't want them getting sucked into a game and sacrificing other things that they would, that they should be doing instead. All right. So if we take a look at the games list right here, if I tap on it, we can see that I have the app limit turned on. I have a maximum of 30 minutes every day. And then when the end of the time limit is hit, it pops up a white screen, and I should have taken a picture of it, but I forgot to. Pops up a white screen that says end of limit. And then there's a button down at the bottom that will say options. And if they click on that, they can choose to ask for more time, or they can just hit OK, and then they'll go off and find something else to do instead. All right? So for games, you can have it set to all, or you can edit the list. Okay, so if I tap on all here, this will drop down every game that is on her device. All right. Now, with every game being on her device, I could go through and I could set up some games. Maybe I want her to have an hour. Maybe some games I only want her to have 10 minutes. Maybe there are games that are educational. I want her to have 2 or 3 hours for school or something along those lines. I can go through and make those adjustments as necessary. All right. I have chosen all games. But what's nice here is you can get as simple as you want. You can just do all apps and categories. That means everything across the board has a limit. You can do just social media, games, entertainment. This entire list right here is all of the different options, or there is even a category for other that if you tap on, some things may not fall under the typical categories, and you may want to have certain things in here, or you may see certain things in here that don't fit the other categories. Gives you the opportunity to set those up specifically as well. And then you'll also see websites. You can add a website here, and that will limit the amount of time that they're allowed to spend on that website. There's more detail on websites that we're going to be getting to in just a couple of minutes, so bear with me. Okay? So that is, let's get out of here. That is app limits. Now, let's say I want games to be 30 minutes, but I want, let's say I choose entertainment, and I want all entertainment. Okay, boom. So if I hit entertainment, and I hit add, now this is going to tell her 30 minutes every day. Entertainment games are only going to be accessible. Now, like I said, most of this stuff is already taken care of. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to click add. It's going to take me back to just games being 30 minutes. Takes care of that. And that, all these games, these time limits take effect in between your downtime. So if your downtime starts, your downtime turns off at 7 a.m. 7 a.m. is when they have access to that game for 30 minutes. And because the time is cumulative, if they spend 30 minutes in one game, they lose access to all games for the rest of the day unless they ask for more time. That's where you may want to go through and set up individual limits. If she plays 5 games at 5 minutes each, that's 25 minutes. She only has 5 minutes left in another game. If she wants more time, she has to ask for more time. Because Sarah and I are both parent/guardians, when she sends a request, it comes to both of us. It pops up in a text message, and within that text message, I have an opportunity to approve or deny, depending on whether I need her to go do a chore first or whatever the case may be. When she asks for that more time, it gets her, I can do it for, I think it's 1 minute, 15 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes, 1 hour, or the rest of the day. And the rest of the day gets her all the way until that downtime where it'll automatically lock it down if it's one of those apps chosen to be locked down. Okay? So that's app limits. It's pretty straightforward. You can see Disney Plus, I have a specific only 1 minute, and that's because we don't want them just watching it, but I don't want to take the app off all the time and have to re-add it anytime that we're going on a trip or whatever. So before we get going on one of our drive days, they will request, we will give them however long is necessary for the trip, and then they'll be able to access their Disney Plus to be able to watch while we're driving. All right. Always allowed. Now, this adds another layer of complexity to it. Pardon me. This gives us the opportunity to determine what apps do we want to completely ignore downtime and app limits. All right. These apps, the child always has access to it no matter what time of day or night. Doesn't matter. There are no restrictions on these apps. All right. So you want to be very careful with what you allow in this regard. This is where they can begin to abuse usage and stuff if you're not careful with it. All right, so just pay attention to that. Now you can see for Becca, we have all the important things, all right? She can access messages anytime, FaceTime anytime. She can access maps, music, her Bible, her calendar, the camera, Hoopla, which is books, I believe, Kindle, Mint Mobile, that's who her cell phone is through, and then of course she can do rain sleep sounds so that she's got a noise machine while she sleeps. Okay, if we take a look down here, these are all the other apps that are on her device that we could go through if we wanted to and add them to her all access. All right. So these things, if I wanted her to be able to use Musician in the middle of the night, I don't, because I don't want to hear guitar strumming at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I could add that to the anytime simply by hitting this plus, and it's gone from the bottom, and I have moved it up to here. That gives her the opportunity to use it whenever. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take it away. So I'm going to remove it, and then it's no longer in her always allowed. It drops all the way back down into the, hey, do you want to add this? Yes or no. All right. The phone is not something that's able to be taken away because, in Apple's opinion, the phone is the whole reason the iPhone exists, to be able to make and receive phone calls. It's absolutely imperative that the phone not be restricted in any capacity. So that's why you will not be able to remove the phone aspect of it in order to do the setups and stuff. The phone is always crucial and super important. All right. So now we're going to go to screen distance. Screen distance is up to everybody. If your child's device happens to have a Face ID camera, you can set screen distance so that they won't be holding it too close to their face. It keeps it at a proper distance for eyesight. Whether you decide to do that or not, that is completely up to you. I don't do it. Her phone is the only thing that has Face ID. She doesn't have a problem with getting it too close to her face. I'm not worried about it. Again, your choice as to how you want to pair it. Parent, not parrot. Communication limits. This is a really important feature, I think, that you will find within the iPhone screen time settings. What it does is it allows you to choose who your child is able to text and receive texts from. I have it set up so that I manage Becca's contacts. So if we go here, I manage Becca's contacts. I choose who her contacts are. If she needs somebody added, like she meets a new friend at a missions trip or something like that, we have a conversation about who this person is, all of this stuff, and then I go through and add it to the contacts through here. She is allowed to edit an existing contact. So if they change their number, if they change their email address, if they change their home address, she is able to go through and edit that. But to me, I currently want the control of that to know who it is that she's talking to. I cannot go in and read her text messages without looking specifically at her device. I can't see who's called or who she's called without looking at her specific device. This is not a spying mechanism per se. This is a mechanism to try to keep people from being able to reach out to your child. Now, this does not block phone calls. It does not block phone calls. It can, if I remember correctly, it can block some text messages. If someone tries to text, it can block by giving a message that says this person's not on your contact list, something along those lines. It's been a while since we've had that happen. It turned out it was a family member that was trying to text her, and for whatever reason, I did not end up having them in her contacts. All right, so allow contact editing. That allows them to edit it. If you don't want them to edit the contact, just turn that off. These contacts are contacts that I specifically have put on her device because I am managing her contacts. When the time comes for me to turn this off, Becca will have full control over her contacts. She will no longer have that little safety net. This is where we have to hope and pray that we've done a good enough job raising her that she's able to make smart decisions. That's what happens with adulthood. We were all there at one point. Whether I'm ready for that or not, that's another story. All right. So you can select, well, let's just go through, during screen time, you can have her do contacts only. Like certain contacts, you can have her do contacts in groups with at least one contact, so you can go through and set those up individually, or you can have her check with every one of her contacts, all right? Be able to be communicated with, all right? That's what that whole purpose is. So, really important aspect is this communication limits. Use it to the best of your ability, your child, all right? Communication safety, this one here, I'm going to encourage you to go to Apple's website and take a look at communication safety on your own. With child pornography being a thing, this is designed to use artificial intelligence, not a person, it's artificial intelligence, to be able to scan the pictures to make sure that there is nothing inappropriate being sent or received in the text messages that your child gets. If you do not manage your kids' contacts, then I would really recommend that you turn on communication safety. I'm going to recommend it. Again, it's up to you. Now, I would also encourage you to take a look at this Learn More when you're going through and setting this up, and also look at the child safety resources, because this is going to give you way more information than I can gloss over at this particular moment. This kind of stuff is really important. I don't want to do it a disservice. I'm going to encourage you to take the time, do your due diligence, choose whether or not you need to set this up for your child. That's the best advice I can give you. All right? Now, the last bit that we're going to go to is this content and privacy restrictions. This, to me, is another big key as far as helping to protect your kids to the level that you want them protected. Again, I'm not telling you how to parent. I'm telling you that this is a tool that you can use in order to try and help keep your child out of trouble accidentally, inadvertently, or intentionally. All right? So if we go on this content and privacy restrictions, you're going to see a whole list of stuff, and your brain's going to go because there's so much in here. Trust me, take your time to get through it. You will be better off for it in the long run. Okay? Now, so the first thing we want to know is whether or not we should turn it on. In this case, I have it turned on. All right? Now, this is where you can get into some really, really granular stuff as far as what you can allow your child to do with their device. All right? So we're going to start with iTunes App Store and purchases. What do we allow for? Okay? I allow Becca to install apps. I allow her to delete apps, and I allow her to make in-app purchases. Now again, if you have Ask to Buy turned on, the child's not going to be able to spend money without requesting permission to buy or spend money. Okay? So you can leave this on. If Ask to Buy is turned on, you can leave this on. And again, for me, it wasn't a big deal because my kids didn't know their Apple ID passwords for a long time. It was only just recently that they got access to their Apple ID passwords. So because of that, I have not had to worry about them spending any money. Again, that's my parenting style. You can also do gift cards where you can leave them a certain amount of money on an account, and that way they can buy their apps, download their in-app purchases, all of that stuff on their own. You're going to have to do some research on that if that's something that interests you. But if you never give them their password, they can't download anything new and spend money on it. They can only download stuff that's already been downloaded. Okay? You can have it set to always require the password or to never require the password. I just have it set on always. Again, it's never been an issue simply because my kids did not have access to their password. All right? So that's iTunes and App Store purchases. Now, this next one here, allowed apps, is also a good one to know. These apps, if there are any applications that you do not want your child to have access that are considered stock Apple apps, okay? If I don't want them to have access to email, I just flick this switch, email is gone from her device. She can't see it. The app does not exist on her device. She can't go in the App Store and find it. Nothing. So you can turn these off and on. On Becca's device, I have Safari enabled, but I have it restricted. I'll show you that in just a little bit. On Hannah's device for the longest time, I had Safari completely disabled because I didn't want her to even access it at all. Okay? You can turn any of these off and the app will disappear from their phone. It's like it doesn't exist. You get to choose how much you want to utilize that. All right? Content restrictions is another good one. This allows you to decide what applications you want your kids to be able to access in the store. Okay? So, music and podcasts. She can only access stuff that's labeled clean. I have music videos turned on. She's never accessed music videos. It's never been a problem. Movies, you can check. So like I could go here and say, what do I want her to be able to access? Well, I'll choose PG. Now, she's not going to go to the store and buy a movie because I don't have it allowed. All right? So she's not going to have access to any of that stuff. So I've never gone through and set this up. But let's just say current restriction PG. Okay, fine. PG. TV shows, not allowed. She's not allowed to see any of them. Okay, books, she's allowed access to clean books. Apps, again, you've got all these different options, 17 plus being the oldest. The apps have ratings just like they do when you buy video games in, Target or Best Buy, whatever the case may be. Apps have ratings. Gives you the opportunity to say, I don't want my kid to download an app that is for kids over 9 years old. So you would come up and click this 9 plus as the one that you want your 9 and over are okay, but in this case I only want like 4 or whatever. You can also just completely not allow. It's completely up to you. All right. So that's for apps, ratings, and stuff like that. Content, website content. If you allow your child to still have access to Safari, you have a few choices here in web content, all right? You can have unrestricted access. That means that they will be able to access anything and everything that is out on the World Wide Web. Okay, you can limit adult websites, or you can have allowed websites only. That means any of these right here are websites that were attempted to be allowed. And some of these websites I don't even recognize, but that's not a big deal. So what happens is they go to a website that is not allowed. It gives them a pop-up. They then have to come to either Sarah or I, and we have to put in our code to allow access to that website. Super simple, easy peasy. So if you do unrestricted or limited adult websites or allowed websites, you go through and set up those settings depending on what you want to allow them to do. Now, searching for content using Siri, I have it as don't allow. Explicit language with Siri, or for Siri to repeat explicit language, I also have that set to don't allow. So my kids aren't able to search the internet using Siri, hey Siri, what's the, blah, blah, blah. And Siri, of course, just popped up on my devices, so. Stop it. Cancel. There we go.
What should I set it to?
Yeah, there's Siri. Thanks so much. Go away.
I will not then.
So, that being said, you've got that as an option, all right? Multiplayer games. Can she play multiplayer games? Yes. She's allowed to add friends. All of that kind of stuff. It's pretty self-explanatory, the rest of this. All right? Sharing location is an option. You can either choose to allow her to share her location or to not share her location. Passcode changes. Okay? Again, putting in my code. Do I want to allow her to change the passcode on her own device? Yes or no? That's all it is. If I say yes, she can change her passcode as often as she wants to. My kids are required to tell us what their passcode is so that we can get in their phone if we need to. If I just choose don't allow, then she's not going to be able to do that. So no problem. And I just lost my screen. Bear with me. There we go. If I don't allow it, okay? It's very simple. Passcode changes, yes or no. Account changes. If you hit allow, this allows them, just like you see up here with my Apple ID, this allows them to go in and click their Apple ID and make changes to their Apple ID. They can change their password. They can do all of that. If I click don't allow, Becca would no longer have access to her Apple ID. In fact, it would be grayed out. Now, this causes panic when they come into the Apple Store and can't figure out why they can't sign out of their Apple ID on their kid's device, and it's because this is turned on. If you don't want them to make changes, either don't give them the password or don't allow changes on accounts. All right, and this is all accounts across the board. All right, cellular data changes. No kid should need to do this. They shouldn't need to go in dealing with any of that stuff. Driving focus. TV provider, that's if you pay for cable TV and you want to be able to use Apple TV with it. You can go in and choose the TV provider and allow them to make changes or not make changes. Again, for most kids, this is not a big deal. All right. And background app activities. This literally says, do you want to allow apps to run in the background or to not run in the background? All right. That is screen time in a nutshell. All right. So now that you have this information, it's totally up to you to determine how you want to use it, how you want to set it up for your kid, and what the benefits are of all of the different features and functions in your effort to try and keep your kid as safe as physically possible. All right. I know it's a long video. Feel free, if you're watching this after the fact, you can skip around. And again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just helping you understand how to do it so that you can keep your kids as safe as you want to. No judgment, no harm, no foul. If you have any questions, please be sure to leave them in the comments box. I'll get to them as quick as I can to try and help you out. If you need some one-on-one time, let me know. Shoot me a message, either here or Facebook Messenger, whatever the case may be. We'll set up a time where we might be able to FaceTime or something along those lines, and I'll do my best to get you squared away. Anyhow, thanks for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take it easy.